Greetings from Nairobi, Kenya. My name is Tom Schmedding, and I'm your host today. I'm an SMU alum, the co-founder of FreshBox, and the head of development at the African Leadership Group. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome you to today's session on careers in public policy and international affairs. I often think of public policy students as some of the world's most ambitious doers and those who want to solve the world's toughest problems. So today I'm hoping to help you demystify the road to success. We will uncover the milestones, failures, and relationships that have enabled our panelists to achieve their goals. My hope is that it will give you some insight as you craft your own journey. So I'm thrilled that we have 4 great panelists who will share their lessons and stories with you. So let me tell you a bit about each of them. We'll start with Fara. Fara Andrews is the Senior Climate Coordinator for the City of Dallas, where she has developed the city's first comprehensive climate action plan. She brings over 20 years of experience working on environmental and sustainability policy issues, including as an environmental outreach manager for the City of Richardson, air quality manager for the City of Austin, and environmental quality specialist for the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. Welcome, Fara.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm really excited to be here today.
Great. Our next panelist is Hope Arcuri, a global communications officer for the International Rescue Committee in New York City. In this role, she supports media relations for the IRC's international programs and leads one of the largest language and culture exchanges in the humanitarian sector. She previously worked in health communications at Global Health Strategies and USAID. Welcome, Hope.
Thanks, excited to talk to all of you.
Next, we have Lauren Roth, who's a senior project manager at the Meadows Mental Health Policy Institute, where she works on adult policy and at the intersection of the criminal justice and mental health care systems. Prior to that, she served as a regional resources evaluator at the Council on Alcohol and Drug Abuse and conducted research with Purdue University's Intimate Partner Violence Lab. Welcome, Lauren.
Thanks, Tom. Happy to speak with y'all today.
And finally, we have Bob Zhang, who works as a cyber transformation associate with KPMG in Dallas, where he helps organizations meet their security and compliance goals to ensure that users are not able to access information deemed private by an organization. Bob started at KPMG as an intern and joined full-time in 2019. Welcome, Bob.
Yeah, excited to be here and get to speak with you all along with so many great panelists here as well.
Thanks, Bob. We're looking forward to having you each here today, so I want to jump straight into it. So we'll start with Far. You majored in environmental science at Texas State. How did you find yourself in the policy world?
I guess I was just lucky, Tom. I think I kind of always knew what I wanted to do for my career from a very young age. So I was able to just tailor my education and my work experience to keep me on that path. I've always been just passionate about the natural environment and, always wanting to encourage people to take positive, sustainable actions. And in the policy world, I realized that's the quickest way to affect the largest number of people. You change hearts and minds through behavior, and I think that's why I landed where I am.
Great. And I hope I'll move on to you next. You studied public policy while at Duke, but you're now working on communications for the IRC. How has your knowledge of policy helped you be a better communicator?
Yeah, definitely. So a lot of people see communications and public policy as different, but they're actually very interrelated. And in communications, my role is actually distilling policy and advocacy developments from the International Rescue Committee and getting US media to cover those. So, it might be a new refugee policy of the US government, and we want CNN to cover that. And so we work to write about the policy in a way that a CNN producer with not a ton of policy experience would be able to write about that and get the general public to cover it. So for me, I started in policy for a couple years, and I realized that a lot of the way I was writing and I had learned to write in public policy was sometimes difficult for the general public to understand. And so I've loved really being able to take what I learned from how to write in more of like a policy wonk way, which is super important, and turn it now into a way that the everyday reader could understand and feel a part of. And I think it's just made me a better advocate of, well, here's the policy, but how can I get, my mom to care about this issue and tweet about it and get a ton of other people to care too. So they're very interrelated.
Awesome. Couldn't agree more. Lauren, you studied psychology and then received a master's degree in clinical mental health. Can you speak about your journey and what you've learned about a career in policy since you joined the Meadows Mental Health Policy Institute?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I started out in undergrad thinking I'm going to be a psychologist. I am going to go to a full-time clinical PhD program. And I did all the things related to that, like the honors program and the fancy resume and the high GPA. I applied to 8 schools and ended up not getting into any of them and changing on a dime what I was going to do at that point. Fortunately, a lot of research background helped me to get a job where I was working with the Texas Health and Human Services Division. And from there, I was able to kind of like make 2 ends meet, my mental health background, but also where public health and policy fits in. So that's why I work with the 2 today at Meadows Mental Health Policy Institute. It's an unexpected journey for me, but instead of offering direct care services, it is a way that I can affect entire communities at a time. And that makes me proud that this ended up happening. So like Far, it just happened, right?
That's awesome. That's awesome. What a great journey. Bob, I want to turn to you real quick. You work in cyber transformation for KPMG, which I think some people on this call may say that doesn't sound like a role centered around policy, but I'm sure that's not the case. Can you speak to how public policy affects your day-to-day work?
Yeah, certainly. So when we think about kind of working with organizations to improve their security posture, a lot of where they start off with is through the legal guidelines. We think about legal guidelines such as GDPR in Europe's California Consumer Privacy Act on California. So what these do is kind of work with personal information, things that can identify you. Think about like your address, your first name, last name, email address, bank information. Companies need to protect this information so that bad actors aren't able to use this information for bad things essentially. So thinking about like those legal guidelines is something that we have to consider during our work, and it's kind of built into what we have as the NIST cybersecurity framework, which is kind of best practices and guidelines for organizations for their security posture. There's 5 subcategories within that. And really what we're doing here is defining what are the best practices, what should organizations be doing to protect people's data.
Great. I'd love to unpack that a little more because I think that, and this is kind of a question for everyone, I think that sometimes there's a lot of great thinking that has come out over time, and we've had policy ideas kind of hashed over and over again. Sometimes places are drawing on best practices from each other, but there may be a little incentive to move outside of a prescribed box. How can we encourage more innovation in the policy world, and what can students do now to focus on new practices instead of best practices?
So I'll take a shot at that. I think that's a very interesting question. In the environmental realm, I think it's very important to kind of know the history of the movement so that you can understand what has happened and what some of the pitfalls are. But I think innovation is playing a huge role right now because technology is offering us so many new options for, cleaning up pollution and, reducing carbon and cleaning water. So all the technology advances are causing us to really think out of the box and come up with new solutions. And it's also causing the policies to advance at a much higher rate, which says this is a very exciting time to be in this career field, especially with all the political will that's going into climate change right now. I can't wait to see what new innovations spring up from there in the coming years.
Yeah, Lauren, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that too. I know the criminal justice, we're constantly hearing about criminal justice reform and how we can continue to tackle elements of that. I'm curious how you guys are thinking about innovation in that space as well.
I love the way you phrased that question, and I can't wait to go ask my coworkers that question and also dig that out. That is so cool. I was thinking when you said that one way that we try to achieve innovation is by not being innovative, by looking at other industries and seeing what they're doing and seeing if there are ways that we can think outside the box within our own industry. So if we would treat individuals who have a physical illness at a jail, for example, a certain way, and allow lots of screenings to make sure that our inmates are healthy, why aren't we doing those things for their mental health as well? And so looking at maybe other areas that are a little more advanced in mental health, because let's be real, mental health is still stigmatized in a lot of places, and efforts to improve mental health is maybe a past 4 decades thing. So that's maybe one strategy that we would employ, is looking elsewhere and not being innovative. In a more innovative sense, though, there are a lot of grassroots opportunities out there. You'll find grassroots groups trying new things. And a lot of times that's because they don't have the funding to bring along X curriculum or to make this huge data best practices program happen. And so they just start at the bottom and create something new that they think and hope will work. And let's measure that and see if it does work. So bringing in evaluation strategies and really looking at all our metrics, doing all that pre and post testing and having fun with the numbers and seeing what works and what doesn't work. If it does work, is that worth bringing into a larger context? Is that worth meeting with higher education and doing some research with? And props to higher education. And I know y'all put this together, but that is a big pull in making sure that we can find new innovative practices, is partnering with higher education.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd love to, sorry.
Go ahead.
I'd love to bounce off of that because that's so the International Rescue Committee where I work, in case you're not familiar, it's one of the largest humanitarian aid organizations in the world. And we help fund a lot of NGOs that are doing innovation on the ground, who are looking at innovative ways to think about policy and advocate for policy. So what Lauren is saying is totally true. There's limited funding to kind of get creative like that, but I feel really proud to work somewhere where we are helping to push the needle and provide funding and help people think outside the box. And at the IRC, we're one of the few large humanitarian aid organizations that has an entire innovation arm. So we actually, through our own donations, run innovations that are policy oriented. So a really good example is currently the United Nations for decades has been providing malnutrition support to children around the world, from Yemen to Syria. And that malnutrition support has been provided in the exact same way for 40 years. The same exact policy that's in accordance with national policies. And the IRC started kind of raising some eyebrows about that, and saying, why are we continuing to try to help starving children in the exact same way that we've always done when just more and more kids are starving today. It doesn't seem like it's working. And so we tested a new policy within a national government. We started with the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and we worked with them to craft a new malnutrition policy of exactly how they provide that aid. And it was so successful that we then rolled that out to other countries, and we pressured the UN to change their entire policy for how they provide malnutrition to save millions and millions more lives. So I just wanted to echo Lauren's point that, you really have to kind of think at a small grassroots level, and you have no idea how much that could expand and make like huge global change, i.e. like saving millions of kids from starvation.
Absolutely. Plus, as someone who works in international development and I have a lot of interaction with the IRC, I can plus one all of what you just said. I would definitely agree.
I can't hear him. Can y'all?
I cannot either. I thought he was going to say my name, but then I saw his mouth move, but words did not come out.
Oh no.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah.
All right, sorry. It's a Kenya internet. So my question for you, Bob, was of all the
He did
issues,
say my name. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Great. Of all the policy issues, cyber is the new up and comer, and it's rapidly changing. What can someone do while in college to stay agile for an evolving sector?
Yeah, and that's a great point that you brought up there, is that technology is moving a lot faster than even governments and policies can develop. I mean, think about those congressional hearings where you see like CEOs at big tech companies sit in front of 60, 70-year-old Congress members who are they're trying to explain just the basics of the internet to them. So a lot of times these policies aren't as advanced as, say, the technology is. But I would say for people that want to be up to date on the policies, read a lot, get an understanding of, what's going on in the world, what's going on, just for specifically with technology, sure, you can at least get a basic understanding of, hey, these are the things that people are concerned about. The law may not have caught up to it, but that's the place that we see it going in the future. And I'm sure everyone else in their own industries, they can see something similar with that.
Great. Thank you. Fara, I wanted to go back to you real quick. Occasionally, I meet people who work in the public sector, but they have solid ideas to address climate change. But as you know, knowing what needs to be done is different than knowing how to get it done. And you developed Dallas's first climate action plan. You've won a number of accolades for it. How did you get it done?
I guess a lot of people want me to say it was easy, but it was an incredible feat working in Dallas and working on climate planning efforts. It was actually my fourth climate planning effort. I started in Austin and worked on 3 of their plans. And Austin is super green, so it was a smoother road. But in Dallas, with big oil, big gas, big business, there were lots of objections. And we were actually the first city in North Texas to walk this path. I think it's really about balance, though. It's about, these are the laws in place to help us move forward, and these are the policies we want to implement, and this is the science. And I think that's where my degree really came in handy, is because I had a really good balance of the science and the policies. So it was like negotiating those 2 areas and trying to still make it relevant to whoever our audience was, kind of tailoring that message. So it was a lot of long nights, a lot of interesting conversations with all sorts of groups. And we met with like 300 different groups just to hear their opinion and what they'd like to see in the plan, and talk through some of their concerns. So I think, yeah, that was the most challenging piece. Is there were a lot of different opinions, but I think we reached a really healthy balance with Dallas's environmental and comprehensive climate plan. There are 97 actions in there. And I think that many of the groups we met with can actually see some of their recommendations there, which brings them more comfort that this plan is going to get us where we need to be. It was an incredible journey for sure.
That's awesome. So impressive. Great work getting that done. I had a question for all of you guys. So we're coming out of COVID. I think we're getting close. I heard vaccines are now available to SMU students. Saw that on social media, so I can't confirm. My question for all of you guys is, the pandemic has created a number of challenges, but it's also opened a number of doors to rethink policy execution. I think it was Winston Churchill who said, "Never let a good crisis go to waste." So now that I'm thinking about it, what career opportunities do you see coming out of the crisis in the policy world?
I can start with that. If you want to work in mental health, unfortunately, this is the moment to do so. There's just a huge need for people in the mental health arena, both in direct care, so I talk about clinicians, right, but also in a public health perspective as well. I think there are so many studies that we could have gone to before COVID happened that showed that when natural disasters occurred and people were displaced, or when different economic crises occurred and people lost their jobs, things like depression and suicide are automatically on the rise. And that's a reason why there's so much need in this field right now. Our state is also undersaturated in clinicians, which might surprise you, especially as you go up the chain. So if you're wanting to be a psychiatrist, the opportunities for that are endless because it is an undersaturated field. On the plus side, telemedicine, that is a thing now. And we have all of these clinical state boards that have changed all their rules to make it more accessible, to make it on insurance panels, which was not the case in the past, which might actually surprise you. But because of that, telemedicine has greatly improved our ability to have direct care offered to people across the state. And now I think from a public health perspective, it's our job to make sure that continues, that kind of accessibility can continue to flourish. And not only that, but perhaps it's time to look at moving our standards in these state boards so that clinicians can access clients, not only in Texas, but if my client moved to New York, then I could continue to treat them there and there would be no pause in their care. So there are a lot of public policy issues that are now stemming from this, that this is like the prime time to address, I think.
Awesome. Do I have any audio problems before I go on to my next question? No audio problems. Great. So even successful folks like yourselves have had people to open doors for them along the way. I'm curious if you would each mind going around and saying who has opened a door for you in your career.
So I'll start with this one. I think one of the programs that actually gave me a huge leg up in my career, it started when I was in college, was the Mickey Leland internship program. it was an internship program that was started in the state of Texas that helped minority students get internships in the public sector. So it introduced me to into the public sector life and gave me a peek at what was possible. And I actually met Mickey Leland a couple of times, so that I definitely put him high on my list for helping me achieve my goals.
Great.
I can think of people at every stage. Like I think in today's world, it is so much work ethic, but it's also connections. And I think we kind of have our heads in the sand if we don't admit that a bit. And so I think for me, it was having authentic relationships, like really not just meeting someone through an internship and then, emailing them when I need a favor, but like actually seeing their work in the news and, emailing them and being like, this is amazing, would love to hear more about this. And like just authentically really knowing and valuing people. And a couple people that come to mind were definitely from my time at USAID, but also another firm that I think is just very, very connected in this space. It's called Global Health Strategies, and they do a lot of advocacy, policy, and communications consulting for some of the largest NGOs and foundations. They do a lot of Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation work. And I think knowing people there who came from very well-known NGOs really gave me a leg up when I was trying to apply to the International Rescue Committee, which in general is so difficult to kind of move into because a lot of people just move laterally within humanitarian aid organizations. So getting your foot in the door, even initially, can be really difficult. So I'm intensely grateful for everyone at Global Health Strategies, and I frequently try to flag people that I can think of for them and stay in touch with them because it's a pretty small community in whatever field you end up getting into. Like the longer you're in it, the more the same kinds of people start popping up.
Y'all have me thinking outside the box because it's more than just singular people that sometimes can be a huge foothold into what you want to do. I was thinking of coalition work and what a big role that has played for me in meeting people and networking and moving into the public policy arena. So there are so many grassroots coalitions in the DFW area. I could go on and on about how many there are, and perhaps, doing that Facebook or Google hunt and finding something that really speaks to you, joining that coalition and becoming a member can be an amazing way to meet people and get started on a career trajectory. I was also thinking about how much research has helped me in my career. So when I was an undergrad student, I did 3 years of research with just one professor. And thank God he wrote me the kindest letter of recommendation to help me land my first job. But instead of spreading myself super thin and trying to form lots of relationships with professors, because that's what all the grad school applications say you're supposed to do, right? If you're thinking about career-wise, really focusing in on maybe one or two close professor relationships and seeking their guidance and counsel moving forward.
Yeah, I'd like to echo what everyone else said, that it really takes a village to be successful. There's so many people I can point to during my career journey that have kind of gotten me to where I am. But one that I really want to highlight is when I had a professor during my college time. I didn't really know anything about applying for jobs, the job application process, what you needed to do. And he really helped me out, giving me, like, knowing my personality, knowing things that I'd be interested in, knowing my strengths, and pointing me to the kind of career that he thought would be good for me, instead of maybe trying to go for, the most prestigious company. Because really, at the end of the day, your work is you really have to be able to enjoy going to work every day, and instead of just having some like big name on your resume. And that was a lesson that I learned, and that's a really valuable lesson that I take to this day.
That's great. I read a lot of studies on happiness, and one of the biggest predictors of personal happiness and professional success is the number of deep and meaningful relationships you have. And so I'm sure that each of our panelists can echo that sentiment. So we're starting to get a bunch of questions in both the Q&A and the chat, and I'll kind of go through them all. But I'm going to start with Michelle's. She said, can the panelists speak to what specific elements of their educational programs best prepared them for the positions they now hold and the projects they have worked on? I'm especially interested in Hope's response since I'm a Duke public policy grad too.
Yay, go Blue Devils. That's awesome. Yeah, I'll definitely let everyone else jump in, but it's a good question. I am going to be honest. I think to Lauren and Bob's points, I think it was more the professors that I really got to know on a deep level through PPS. And more so than what I learned. Like, of course, I remember taking econ and like slaving away in the library, and I've like used some of that on the job. But I think it was more like learning how to think and sitting in office hours with really incredible professors who would kind of push the way I would make an argument. I'm specifically thinking about some of the ethics courses and like long form writing courses I took at Duke, where I had to really make an argument like very sound and very understandable to the general public, because that's a lot of what I do in communications. You know, if you are writing a sound bite for like the headline hour of MSNBC, and what you say is like pretty fallible and not super sound, immediately the host is going to be like, okay, well, can you expand on that? Or it's going to become, a viral meme about how so-and-so said something stupid. And so you have to just be really, really careful about, making whatever you say, whether it's one sentence or 5 pages, like really solid. And so I can remember my freshman year, I came in, I'm sure everybody has this experience, like, oh, I'm a writer. I'm like really great at writing. And I got like a 40 on my first paper. And I was like crying and like, I'm a failure. And it was so humbling because, in this day and age with digital communication, everyone's a writer. Like if you are writing a tweet, like you're now a writer. And so there's such a new standard to like really good writing. And I think that Duke pushed me to be a really good writer, not just a writer. So I hope I answered that well, but also feel free to email me because I love to talk to people about this issue, because I think that it's more like how you think and who you meet and how you're pushed more so than like the actual subject area.
Yeah, I think I can definitely echo a lot of what Hope said. If I had to think back about my educational program and what element best prepared me for where I am, I would probably have to say it was my extracurriculars. It was, I was in the environmental program, but it was the environmental clubs that actually exposed me to the whole world of what people thought, what their objections were, what obstacles I needed to overcome. Just like that whole grassroots experience with getting other college students to sign a petition, to make a change, and starting to learn that, oh gosh, even though I think this is the best thing for the school, that opinion isn't shared. And I need to learn how to construct my argument. I need to learn how to communicate with people on different levels. So it kind of prepared me for what was to come. And I think that was probably one of my most valuable experiences in school.
Yeah, there's a study that came out by the Center for Creative Leadership, and it basically said that 70% of learning happens in real-time experiential projects. 20% of learning happens based on who you know, who your network is, and only 10% of learning actually happens in the classroom. And so I think that, to Hope and Fara's point, it's the extracurriculars that make a huge difference. I want to go to a question from Reese. For college students who are still feeling somewhat uncertain about their future career paths, what steps would you recommend taking to explore possible career opportunities in the field of public policy and international affairs?
I like that question a lot. And I think it's an important step to make when you're looking at your career field, because sometimes your academic advisor is not able to be the end all, know it all in that area. Perhaps looking at a couple different dream jobs of yours and looking at their bio and seeing what they did. I know that's something that I did several years back when I did not get into PhD programs, was say, well, maybe I'm more attracted to this, or I can be very attracted to this kind of job. And what did this person do? Going and checking out what they did, and even interviewing several people too. LinkedIn is a wonderful thing. So sending them a message and asking if they'd be willing to have a chat with you, and just getting some more, like you were saying, Tom, experiential conversation going on and learning what they did. I also think I think sometimes having some science research background can give you a leg up. And that's a more rigid response perhaps than what some other candidates had here, but sometimes having that scientific background and can help you stand out against the crowd a little bit. And so if you're looking for gaps to fill or minors to fill, that might be something to consider.
Yeah, I agree with that. I paired public policy with global health, and I do think that that helped a lot because I was able to look at roles within global health and roles within public policy. So, if there's a way you could concentrate or do a minor, just to show your interest in a specific area of policy, it only can help widen the options. But I was also going to say, like, thinking a little bit outside the box, because sometimes a role might not sound like it's policy. And all of us can filter on LinkedIn to the policy openings of that month, and it's going to give you like policy in the title, but oftentimes something that where policy isn't in the title, there's actually maybe even more policy, just because of the way you're kind of interacting with the policy and advocacy people. And that's kind of why I started off by saying that communications and policy are really interrelated. I think I do more policy than even some of my friends who like are policy officers, because I'm like reading and distilling so much policy and putting it into everyday language that I actually can sometimes even become an expert on some of these policies because I'm just reviewing them so much. And so, like, I would just challenge you to kind of think a little bit outside the box with like what is a policy job, and even like what is an international relations job, because I wasn't sure if I wanted to move to humanitarian aid because I saw it as slightly different than international affairs, but it's very interrelated. So I think there's kind of there's a lot of synergies there, and the best thing that I learned was reading a job description and then reaching out to people at that company and asking them to explain like what you actually do, because sometimes the job description isn't exactly what you're going to be doing day to day, and you might find out, oh, I work with an advocacy person all day every day. Wow, that's going to be so much exposure to policy, and even though it isn't exactly what I had in mind, maybe I'll learn a ton of policy kind of through the back door, and then I'll move over to policy at the same company, or maybe I'll like this more than even being like the direct advocacy and policy person.
Great. Knowing what you know today, if you could go back and change about what you studied in college, would you switch your area of study, add an academic area, etc.? Lauren, I think, but others.
Y'all lost them too, right?
I heard my
Yes.
name.
All right.
So we lost you there at the end, Tom, but I think you were reading the question from the chat from Bryce.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Do one of you guys want to have a go at that?
Yeah, sure, I can kick it off. So really, I mean, I think my major would stay the same, but I think I would really want to take more classes in other aspects to, broaden my knowledge base. I know it's hard, like when I was in college, I just wanted to, finish as quickly as possible, take as few classes that I needed to finish. But looking back now, I really wish I did, explore something else, maybe take another class that's completely unrelated. Maybe it's something that I could use like in the future, because a lot of things that weren't taught in my classes, I've had to try to learn and pick up now. And so maybe for me, using that college experience to really get a wide base of knowledge could have been useful for myself.
I would probably make a more drastic change. I would have gotten an MPH instead, a Master in Public Health. I think that would be a more ideal way to get into a public health policy field. And not just because of what I learned, because I think experiential learning is almost better, like we've been discussing, than actual classrooms, but to help build a network. Making those connections at the grad school level especially is key to moving forward. And in the work that we do, having those higher ed relationships can be huge in pushing policy efforts forward.
Just thinking back about my choices and what I studied, I think I had a really good balance between the science and the policy aspect. If I had to change something, I would definitely incorporate more of the people perspective. A lot of what I do in environmental policy affects people on a personal level. So like maybe public health, I think being able to articulate how the change that we're encouraging affects your, not only your economics, but your health, and make it very personal to them. I think understanding a little more about that intersection would have definitely helped me move further. And also psychology, because there's numerous times. I think one of the biggest obstacles is just overcoming people's objections, and having empathy and needing to understand, well, why do they feel this way? And then what do I need to say to encourage them to move in a different direction? So a lot of that, I think, was just trial and error at the beginning. But I think a little more, a few more classes in that area probably would have made my road a little smoother in the beginning.
Yeah, I wish I had taken more history classes. They weren't required for the public policy degree that I got, but looking back, I really think that's key for understanding policy, because you might be coming up with a policy, but you don't know that 30 years ago, a different government tried that and it was a complete failure. Or, you might not understand the context of whatever crisis zone you're currently operating in. A lot of the crises that we work on at the International Rescue Committee have been going on for 20 to 40 years. And so if you don't really know how those started, why they're still existing, why they're protracted, you can't really come up with good solutions and good policies for the future.
Yeah, at least when I was an undergrad at SMU, you could create your own major. And I would actually encourage more people to explore that as a viable career opportunity and or viable education path. And I think the reason why I say that is because I think education, especially higher education, should be focused on on picking kind of a large problem you want to solve or an opportunity you want to capture, and then building a multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary curriculum around that that brings in elements like hope, and like everyone on here has said, brings in a lot of interdisciplinary pieces to create a toolkit so that you could solve that challenge. I often find that I think traditional majors are at least a little bit restrictive in the number of course requirements they have. And so I would encourage people, if they're willing to kind of get a little bit creative and want to tackle a bigger challenge rather than work on a specific body of facts, I would encourage them to develop their own major. We got more questions, but we are running out of time. I think this will be the last one. Juan, do you recommend graduate school immediately after graduating, or gain some experience in public policy before pursuing a graduate degree?
Well, I can talk about my experience a little bit. I took about a year in between, and at that time I worked a research job at Purdue Intimate Partner Violence Lab and got a lot of experience in research during that time, and it helped me to get my next job and actually go to grad school at night so that I could pay for said job semester by semester, or said grad school program semester by semester. And I realized earlier I said an MPH program. I wish I had done that. I think there are a lot of ways to get to where you want to be. And considering if grad school is one of them, it is a really tough person by person decision. And whether you want to take time in between or not, maybe also consider your love for school. If you are someone who really loves going to school, that is not me. But if you are someone who really likes going to school, I bet by the time you're 24, 25, you're still going to really like going to school, and you'll still have the energy and passion to do so. But if you're like me, I needed to go quickly and get it over with. So there are a lot of different avenues to getting where you want, and considering where your passion is, I suppose.
Just to build on that, I think in my experience, when I finished with my undergraduate degree, because I went into public service, there are usually programs which do tuition reimbursement or some sort of tuition allocation, which allowed me to, and not only allowed me to, but encouraged me to seek a higher degree. Like there was a financial incentive for me to continue my education. So I think that that was the shove I needed to keep going. I wasn't one of those people who loved school either, but then I thought, oh gosh, this is almost free now, so I should probably take advantage of this opportunity. So it ended up working out. I mean, the work-life balance was manageable because it was an employee incentive and they took that into consideration.
Great. Well, now we're going to move into the final part of our call. It's something I like to do whenever I've hosted these panels in the past, and I think it really kind of brings out the humanity in all of our panelists. So I'm going to throw you guys in the deep end a little bit. For the last few minutes, I'm going to ask you a series of rapid fire questions, something I call the fire walk. And I want you to overthink it. So in less than 7 words, answer these questions. All right, Lauren. Running or swimming?
Swimming.
Hope, one thing on your bucket list.
I'm a huge daredevil. I would have said skydiving, but I did that last year. Visit 100 countries.
Wow. Bob, your house is on fire. What do you grab first?
My laptop.
Far, mentor or mentee?
Mentor.
Mentor. Hope, complete the sentence. Policy is important because.
Can change the world.
Lauren, 3 core values you live by.
Integrity, competence, empathy.
Some good ones. Far, your vision for the world in 2050.
World peace. That's a tough one.
Yeah, no, these aren't easy. Bob, if you could get the answer to one question, what would you ask?
That's tough. Wow. I can't think of it. I don't know what makes people happy.
What makes people happy? Lauren, one piece of advice you'd give to your 21-year-old self.
Slow down.
Slow down. Hope, you've got 99 problems, but this is not one of them.
Oh, so many problems. I guess working out. I love to work out.
I love it. And final question, Far, in 5 years, we will look back on this year and say what?
We survived.
We survived. What a wonderful way to end this conversation. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure to speak with you all. Thank you for all you're doing to change the world, and may you continue to have more impact and leaving the world better than we left it. To our viewers, thank you for joining us. It's been a pleasure hosting you today. I'd encourage you to engage with both the Tower Center and the Heggie Center. I was involved with both of them when I was on campus. The SMU Tower Center events are posted on connect.smu, and Heggie events are posted on Handshake. Heggie is currently accepting applications for unpaid internships through Handshake. So you can receive up to $2,000 if you're interning with a nonprofit or government organization. Don't forget to follow Heggie and the Tower Center on social media. Thanks again, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you, and thank everyone for joining.
Thanks, everyone.